Welcome to the Big Movement Podcast. If you're ready to create results and make huge strides in your business, finances, personal development, and health, then you're in the right place. Pushing past excuses and powering through procrastination can be a challenge alone. Here, you'll get the support, tools, and knowledge you need to get to the level you desire in your business and life. Let's get started with your host, Byron Ingram.
And welcome to another episode of the Big Movement Podcast. Today we have a special guest. We have Doug Cunnington, who is the founder of Niche Site Project, where he writes about using project management on Amazon affiliate sites. He's been quoted and mentioned on sites such as neilpatel.com, Social Triggers, Backlinko, and Ahrefs. So let's dive into learning all about niche sites with Doug. So Doug, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I am really appreciative to be on the Big Movement podcast and just part of the community. So I appreciate it.
Sure, definitely. So how did you get into the world of niche sites? Because it's not like people wake up one day and think, I'm just going to build niche sites.
Right. Well, I think I found the sort of the gateway that a lot of people find, and that is the podcast Smart Passive Income by Pat Flynn. And I just randomly found that podcast just on my iPhone, just searching around, and I saw the cover art, and I thought, hey, that sounds interesting. And before you know it, I listened to 50 or 60 episodes over a couple weeks, and I was super pumped about online marketing, internet marketing in general, and then I learned about niche sites. So it was really random, and before that, I never knew that you could actually make money online. I mean, I heard about it a little bit, but when I started to see the actual money that people could make from niche sites, I thought it was fantastic. So within about 6 weeks or so, I sort of, learned about WordPress, launched my first site, and, the journey started at that point.
Wow, that's amazing if you think about it. You just took that massive action. And who would have thought that you were just flipping through podcasts and go, smart passive income, that sounds interesting, and how it changed the course of everything you've been doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I guess I'm sort of a nerdy type, if I could describe myself that way. So I get sort of obsessed with certain details and different, aspects that really work well for internet marketing, niche sites, and, the whole process, start to finish, of creating a niche site.
Right. And, when you look at it, there are so many different moving pieces to create a niche site, but it's a really powerful thing. So what attracted you to the concept of building niche sites?
So overall, it was, I guess selfishly, a little financial gain, right? So, we're all sort of interested in making a little more money and working on a side project that we may have a little more passion about than maybe our day job. So, and to provide some context, before I found, niche sites and started doing this full time, I worked in management consulting and did, project management for software companies. So I sort of had, a good job, in air quotes, a good job that people would, be really happy to have. But I know a lot of other people are in the same situation where you may have a good job, but you're not really happy with, spending most of your time at work. Maybe some of the tasks that you're working on aren't really meaningful, and, they feel like a waste of time. A lot of it feels like a waste of time. And I was in that position. So part of the draw of niche sites was really, being able to, make money on my own with something I generated all by myself. And, once you get that feeling and make that first dollar, you understand that you can do it again and again. And that's a really, important aspect.
Right. And that's so critical because so many people, they struggle with constantly learning instead of just do it. Because just like you said, once you do it that first time, you can do it over and over again.
Exactly. And I feel like, as long as your path is moving forward, you have momentum. And, perhaps the original, goal that I had, I don't even remember what it was at the time, but it was probably something like, make a couple dollars a day on like one website. But once I got on that path and was moving forward, I had momentum to, change my path and do something a little bit different if I wanted to. But, of course, it's still in the internet marketing arena. But, essentially it gives you a path to go forward. And I think, I'm talking about niche sites here in this specific case, but really it does apply for anything.
Right. And it's so true, because once you get that ball rolling that way, and then you just start becoming addicted where you want to scale it and build to start creating the things that you want. So when you first got started building your niche sites, what was the first thing that you did in terms of, I know I can do this? What did you pick and how did you go about that?
So I can't reveal the specific niche, but for me, I can give a decent example though. For me, I'm actually into like beer brewing and like home brewing and that sort of thing, craft beer. So, one could create a site around, a hobby that they're into, especially, if it's something that you are passionate about. Okay. So, when I did get started, I sort of, knew I needed to have a niche that I, had some interest in. Otherwise, it's very difficult to actually create that content. But after that, it was more like of a technical exercise. Again, this is where, my nerdy background helps out. So, I had to set up hosting. So, for me, I went to Bluehost and just set up a regular account, which is relatively inexpensive. I think you can get a shared package for $5 a month or so. And then started learning about WordPress. And before I found Smart Passive Income, I never even heard of WordPress. It's almost embarrassing to say because it was only like 4 years ago. But I never knew about WordPress. And once I got in there and saw that you could create a website, you could buy a off-the-shelf theme that looks beautiful. I'm no designer at all, but you can get a website going in a weekend and have a very nice, respectable looking website. And then, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no. So with that, you talk about building the WordPress site and the niches that you build sites for. Do you spend a lot of time making them look really pretty and fancy looking, or do you keep them simple and straight to the point?
The latter. So definitely, there's a lot of debate on this. And as a person who is not a designer, I confidently say that doesn't matter as much. It's much more important to provide the visitor to your site, or actually whatever your medium is. If you're making podcasts, or if you're making YouTube videos, or if you're writing content, you should be trying to solve a problem for whatever visitor, viewer, or listener is consuming your content. So if you're providing good content, it doesn't actually matter how beautiful the site is. Now, when you're, once you have an established brand, I think it is important to have a nice looking site. At that point, you're an authority in whatever niche you're in. So you need to present yourself as an authority. So it can be important, but most of the time, I would say, 80-90% of the time, if you're providing good content, a person can look past, any deficiencies in design.
Right. And I think people got stuck there because they're in that mindset of, oh, I have to make this look perfect. Hey, I see apple.com and it's this amazing site, so I must make mine look just as good. And then they never get started.
Exactly. So, may I ask you questions too?
Sure, of course. We're just having a normal conversation here.
Okay. So how do you advise people to, take the next step and, set their perfectionism just aside so that they can make some progress?
It's one of those ego checks. And for me, I like to say, you just have to get over it and follow a simple mantra. Good is good enough.
Yep.
Because if you're always trying to make things perfect, there's something else that's going to come out like, oh, there's a new shiny thing. I should add this. You'll never get it started. So you just have to put it out there, because if you spend all your time trying to perfect it, you don't even know if it works. So you should really, just like you said, put more emphasis on getting people to the site in the first place. Make it look pretty later.
Yes, indeed. And I know, I mean, I struggled with it. I was very, I guess, not embarrassed, but I guess timid in the fact that I knew that, I'm not the strongest writer. I'm trying to improve, but I'm not the strongest writer. And I know early on I would get emails from people that, were correcting my grammar, spelling, stuff like that, which is a little embarrassing, but you kind of have to, one has to put themselves out there to,
Right.
You're exposed a little bit, and that's when I guess the real magic happens.
Right. I remember I was at a seminar, it was several years ago, and the speaker, he's written several different books out there, and it all came down to something simple. You had people that say, oh, there's an error in this book here, and they're just pointing out these few little mistakes. His response was, so where's your book?
Exactly.
That usually would quiet people down, because, look, unless you are putting out books that generate content, like generate revenue and clients and so forth, don't start criticizing somebody because they haven't done what you're doing.
Indeed. And, I've heard it from other people, so I definitely didn't originate this, but, the more popular you are, the more people are going to criticize you. It's very easy to criticize. So it's sort of a sign that, you're doing a good job.
Right, exactly. I think that's one of those little check boxes, the rite of passage. You have your haters and criticizers, just like, yes, they've discovered me.
Exactly. Exactly.
Until then, you're just kind of flying underneath the radar, and you just, once you pop up, oh, now you have arrived. And that makes a world of a difference. So how do you go about really finding those niches? Because so many people, like you mentioned what you're passionate about, but sometimes things you're passionate about might not be the best thing for making money in.
Right, right. So there's definitely a balance of, finding profitability versus, your passion. So I know I have an example. One of my students, a person that I've worked with for a while, he actually was able to create a niche site, and it got traffic and it made a couple sales, but it was all built around like books. And I work primarily with Amazon stuff, and Amazon started by selling books, of course, and it turned out, you can't make that much money selling books when you're just getting a small percentage, because books are not that expensive. So even though he did most things right, he was passionate about reading, he actually got traffic to his site. At the end of the day, he wasn't able to, make much money at all. So he had to scrap it and move to, another product line where, and I'll just sort of spit out a formula here where, if you look at a certain amount of search volume, which we're getting into the weeds a little bit here, but we could come back and sort of summarize if we need to. But if you're looking at a particular search term, and always look around my desk to find some example. So we'll say a Kindle, right? So you can build a site around like Kindles and giving reviews on Kindles, because the price point around there is high enough and enough people would potentially search. I'm going to make up, maybe about 10,000 people. I know that number is not right, but maybe 10,000 people uniquely search for some information about Kindles per month. And then if you create a site around that, that at least 10,000 people, probably many, many more, are searching for information about Kindles. And you also know the price point of Kindles is, roughly $80 or higher, up to a couple hundred. And for me, that's sort of the sweet spot where you have a range of prices and the average price is around, $80 or higher. And if you get to that point, with the prices, then you're going to be okay. It's profitable. Versus the book example, where most books, even very good books, maybe only cost $20 hardback.
Right. And that is so important to look at things where there's that search volume at a higher price point because if you're thinking about it, if you're only making a couple percent in terms of a sale, if you're just looking at Amazon off of a book, like great, you made $1 off of that book. That's not going to do you much good. Versus if you look at something that's like $100, well then there's $8 off of if you're making 8% off of that one
Exactly.
item, and that adds up significantly.
Definitely. Yeah. And you do get just to mention something about the Amazon affiliate program, if people aren't familiar, um, this whole model is built around a site, a niche site that has reviews of specific products. And on the website, there's affiliate links that head over to Amazon. Um, if a person makes a purchase within 24 hours, you get a commission on whatever they buy, whether it was what you were reviewing or something you didn't review, plus any other items that they may have. So, a good example that I like to provide is around the holidays, the retail season around November to December. People do a lot of, I mean, I pretty much do all my shopping on Amazon. It's just much easier for me to deal with than a mall situation.
Right.
And people will buy all their gifts online. So maybe they just browsed and learned a little bit of information about a product from this review niche site, but they bought $1,000 worth of stuff, and you get a commission on that $1,000, not just the $100 item that they looked at. So you could see, and I've seen it, dozens of times. A lot of my students and other people, my peers, their revenue goes up by 2 or 3x in November and December. It's remarkable.
Wow, that's incredible. Especially because you're not doing anything different. So when it's the holiday season like that, and people are thinking this is a great idea, with the people you work with, your peers, the students, typically like how many, like you mentioned the with the orders going up 2 or 3 times. Is that like just the average out there, or is it just that you see some people they start with I don't know they're looking for a Barbie doll or something like that. Next thing you know, they're buying a TV. Is that pretty common?
Yes, much more than you would think. Much more than you would think. And a lot of folks will just buy more stuff, even if they're not necessarily getting a gain on shipping. So, I'm a member of Amazon Prime, and that's where, you pay a fixed fee and you get 2 day shipping uh, for no additional cost. And even though I'm part of Amazon Prime, I will often load up my cart because I think, hey, if I'm getting a shipment, I may as well buy 5 or 6 things that I maybe don't need.
Right.
So I don't know. Do you do the same thing? Is that typical?
Oh yeah, I use Amazon Prime all the time. Sometimes I wonder, like, I think it's people like us that are at one end of the spectrum that we use it all the time, and there's other people who kind of use it once in a blue moon, so we help balance it out.
Right, right. And I was gonna say, since you're in Dallas, you could probably get like same day shipping, right?
On some things, yeah.
And which is crazy. It's like you can order it in the morning and you'll have it. They just throw it on the truck. It's just amazing.
Oh yeah, it's really convenient that we're like, I kind of want this today. Oh, it'll be here by 3. Excellent. It's
Yeah,
amazing when you think about how e-commerce has shifted things. Because if you just turn back the clock, well, maybe more than a couple years, but you think about that time if you ordered something, there was this long delay before you actually got it. Versus now, you can have something in the matter of hours.
it's amazing.
Oh yeah, I like to jokingly say if you remember the days of like you had the old Sears catalogs, and if you ordered something to place the order, then typically if it wasn't delivered, it'd have to go to a delivery center, and it could take 2 weeks or whatever before you got it.
Right.
Versus you look at it now, oh, you can track the whole thing, you could see when it leaves the distribution center, and they're knocking at your door.
Yeah, very true.
Times have changed dramatically. So when you're looking at leveraging a site like Amazon, what's the And of course, there's things like Kindle and things like that. What are some of those other best practices to really figure out what types of products are good to look at? Because there's so many choices there that they could just spend weeks browsing and never make a decision.
Right. So the primary driver for me is around, the keyword research. So you can check how many times, people are searching on Google and have an idea on how popular it is, based on that. You can also look at Google Trends and get a really good idea about, the popularity, if it's increasing or declining over time, and the trend gives you a really good idea about that. The other part is, and I don't do this too much, but you can, see how many reviews are on Amazon. And I think in general, if I see more than, 20 or 30 reviews for a product, a specific product, and I see that sort of across the board for the top 5 products, like Kindles, like I was mentioning. So if you see a lot of, actually, that may be a really bad example because there are, thousands of reviews for Kindles. But if you find a product, okay, I'll find something else. So I see a printer, a wireless printer over there that's also in my office. So the thing is, if you see a lot of reviews, you know that people are buying the product. So,
Right.
if you see over 100, then you're in good shape and they're pushing a lot. Additionally, you could sort of see the selling rank, although, like I mentioned, I don't look too closely at that, and I can rely pretty much on the keyword search volume, and that's because I typically rely on organic search traffic from Google.
Okay, so now why are you relying mainly on organic search traffic instead of other paid, or let's say instead of paid traffic sources?
Sure. Well, first, I don't know much about paid traffic sources, so that's the number one reason. But
That's a good reason.
the other reason, the other reason is the Google organic traffic is really well targeted, so I haven't even had to go to the paid route. So the Google organic traffic is so well targeted because, I'll give an example of a keyword, sticking with the wireless printer. So I may say, or I may think about a search term that's like, what's the best wireless printer for a big office? So that sort of search term indicates that, number one, the person is really interested in a specific kind of printer that can do a specific kind of thing. And when you find someone that is looking and searching for that specific term, they're a potential buyer. In fact, they're probably on their way to Amazon or somewhere to make a purchase. And they just want to get a little affirmation about the product and have a little better understanding. And when they search for that, they're looking for a review site, something authentic with good information where they can, discern something about that printer and what they should buy. So at that point, you're sort of intercepting the buyer on the way to Amazon, and you get the commission if they click through your link. So that's sort of my goal. And those kind of keywords just convert so well that I haven't had to go to paid traffic.
So by the sounds of it, it seems more like with the sites you're building, are you building them more around the questions people are asking instead of like the old-fashioned approach like of HP wireless printer model 223 or whatever it is?
Definitely, more of, solving problems and providing information versus the other part.
Right. And that makes more sense because if you look at how people are searching, especially with people doing things on mobile devices now and using voice search, people are asking Siri and Google questions.
Yes, that is exactly right. And it's more of a natural language type of a search versus anything that's really formulaic. So and as I mentioned it a couple times, I guess it's a theme where, if you're solving someone's problem, whether they're looking for a product or they're trying to learn about entrepreneurship, like if you solve the problem, they'll want to read the information and they'll appreciate that you're solving their problem.
Right, exactly. It's so much easier. And then also from the standpoint, if you look at the masses, so many people are still being taught to do it the old-fashioned way, just optimize for the name of something instead of optimizing something for it in the form of a question to solve a problem.
Right, right, and you can still see some artifacts of that when you look deeper in the search results. You can see some, I guess, inferior information, inferior sites, and sort of like an old way of doing things from it's ancient at this point, but it's 3-4 years old.
Right. Well, that's the world we live in. The strategies that once worked, you can't really do them anymore today. You have to keep evolving. As I remember the days when, in terms of optimization, thing you could do was keyword stuffing. So you would do something like you'd have your one little paragraph on the page, but then it would be this gargantuanly long piece of content with like the rest of the font, like everything else being like in white print or something like that. So
right, trying to hide. Yeah.
Like, oh look, there's 2,000 keywords in there, but you can't see them. Since, of course, in the beginning, it worked great. Now, don't even try it.
It's a little different. Yep.
But things are constantly evolving with what you're doing. So obviously, you use WordPress to build a site. You're using Amazon. Do you use any other affiliate sites out there?
I don't. I have looked at a few other programs with specific vendors, but most of the time the payouts aren't enough to make up for the benefit of Amazon, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But for example, Amazon typically will pay a commission of between, I think it's like 1% and 8%, and which is a recent change, by the way, over, I think, just this month. It's March 2017 right now, so just this month is when that changed a little bit. So it's a category-based commission rate versus the previous volume payout rate. So that's a new change. But anyway, the point is it pays out 1 to 8%, and other affiliate programs may pay out. I've seen 4 to about 15% in the niches that I'm involved in. So up to 15%, that's very good. But the problem is people are only buying the one product there, and Amazon. The big benefit is, one, people really trust it, so the conversion rates are really high. And then 2, people buy a bunch of other stuff. So for me, I'm better off going with Amazon, even if the commission rates are lower.
And that makes sense because it's better to have a slightly lower commission and people end up buying 3, 4, or 5 products at once versus buying one product with a slightly higher commission.
Yes.
It makes a world of a difference.
Yep. In the math, every niche will be a little bit different. So, a person should, check the math and do the projections and build spreadsheets and some models and see what happens. But I would bet that Amazon's going to be more profitable most of the time.
Right. So once you've built the site and you've figured out which products on Amazon that you're going to use, do you end up putting multiple products on a single site, or is it just a site that's focused around like a wireless printer or several different wireless printers, things like that?
Great question. It is around more of a niche. So previously, back in the day, I did create a couple sites where it was only about printers. But at this point, I'd rather have fewer projects. I'm sure you could relate.
Right.
You'd rather have fewer projects going on than a lot of different, slightly related, but not directly related projects. So for me, I'd rather have fewer sites. So what I've done is, instead of focusing on a specific product like printers, I would focus on office products, and then, well, that's unlimited, basically. I mean, that's more stuff than I could ever cover. And if I want to expand, I can, cover printers at first, but then I can expand over to, wireless keyboards, mice, trackpads and drawing pads, stuff like that. And, if you think about an Office Depot or Staples, basically any product in there you could cover, which is unlimited.
And that's a great way to do it, because then it allows someone to go deeper into your site. Because if someone's looking for printers, as going with this whole Office example, there's a good chance they're going to be interested in other items as well.
Yep, and they may need cables to connect the printer. They may need a wireless router to take care of the wireless part there. So there's tons of related items, and it number one, it allows you to expand your site and grow without creating new projects, to my previous point. But it also sort of shows Google that you're a well-rounded site covering a range of products versus a very small site that has 15 pages and they all have a printer review on them. And that's not really what Google's trying to push in the search results. So from my perspective, it's much better to have a well-rounded site and one that can grow. It sort of future-proofs what you're doing.
Right. And it also makes it easier to have a site that has depth to it, because then there's more content instead of, oh, look, you have a site with one piece of content. It doesn't work as good anymore.
Exactly. And to that point, back in the day, a lot of people would just have affiliate content, so everything was a review. But at this point, I would say at a minimum, you should have 50% of helpful informational content, more blog type content, just to make it more well-rounded. Additionally, Amazon likes to have that. Amazon wants to have their affiliates, providing good content and, being more of a community aspect versus just an affiliate site.
Right, and that's so critical. So with that being said, and of course this is going back to the whole concept of driving traffic, what are some of your favorite ways to get your site found? Because people are thinking, okay, I figured out that now I'm going to use Amazon. I need to figure out WordPress. Then there's that whole idea of, okay, well, how do I get people to my site?
Right. So I'm going to lean a bit on my project management background. And, part of that is sort of simplifying the process and looking at what's really effective versus all the, things and tasks that I can work on that are possible, but I don't know if they're effective. And I mention it like that because, I'm an internet marketer, right? And I know that there are many, many sources of information. In fact, it's incredibly overwhelming if you start trying to look around and see, how do you get traffic to your site? And then there's all these conflicting sources. And if you follow everyone's advice, then you'll never make any progress. It's really hard to sort through it. So
right.
I simplify it quite a bit, and it's essentially a two-step process of doing blog commenting, manually going out there and, finding blogs that are either in your niche or related. And then after you make a contact through that blog commenting, you're able to build a relationship. Email the person a couple times, and then you may be able to ask for a guest post. So the two steps are do blog comments, real manual blog comments, and then ask for a guest post. And then at that point, you'll be able to start creating backlinks to your site. And you've made a friend, you've networked within your niche, which is always a good thing to know people in your niche, and then you'll be able to continue the relationship in the future, and you just repeat the process.
And that's a simple thing that anybody can go out there and do. It's nothing that's super technical, where you look at some of the strategies that get into building backlinks and sites and so forth, versus go find a niche, a blog out there that's in your niche, and leave a comment. How much simpler does it get?
Right, right. And, the other part is it's sort of, future proof for, any Google algorithm updates or, changes that can happen because, the thing is blog comments and guest posting are totally natural. I know I comment on blogs within my niche, and it's just normal. That's what people do that are bloggers.
Right. And the important thing when you really look at it is, and this just goes back to looking at those core principles of search engine optimization, do things that are natural. If you produce great quality content, that's deal with the comments and so forth as well, but then it's also socially shared, you're always going to be fine. Google's not going to look at you and think something's fishy here.
Exactly. Exactly. And, I will say some of the gray hat techniques, and you know what, I'll provide a definition here. So what I just described is what people would call white hat SEO, where it's natural and it does not violate Google's webmaster terms of service. Gray hat, on the other hand, is something that does violate the Google webmaster terms of service. It's not illegal or anything like that, but it's essentially, creating backlinks that aren't really natural. And I'm, doing air quotes. So if you're building backlinks that aren't natural, that's considered gray hat, and that can get you into trouble as far as Google penalty or something like that. So white hat definitely just kind of, it keeps you on the up and up, and it's in my opinion, it's a more respectable kind of way to run a business that has longevity. And I'm not personally interested in a flash in the pan, having a site that does really well and then goes away really fast. I want something that will last.
Right. Having things that last make a world of a difference. It's so important. So once someone does all these things and they start commenting on different blog posts, they're building the relationship and doing guest posts, typically with the students that you've worked with, from the time that they come up with the idea until the time that they see potentially that first check from Amazon, what's the range of time that you've seen for that to happen in?
So I actually had a student come through in the last few weeks, and I believe he got his first sale in about 6 weeks. It may have been a touch sooner. That's pretty good. It's totally possible if you're able to, publish the content, do the blog commenting, and then get the guest posting underway. And he was actually able to do this, before any guest post, and it was simply through, solid keyword research and a few blog comments. So, he hasn't, paid off all his investments yet, with, buying hosting. Imagine that's $100 along with the theme. But, he made his first couple dollars, which, as we mentioned before, it's sort of a milestone that's really important. A small win early on teaches you that you can do this. You can make some progress and make the sales. So, long answer for the answer of about 4 to 6 weeks.
Well, and that's good because it becomes realistic that if someone's starting something, that if they follow a set formula, it's possible, versus something like, well, it might happen, it might not, but if they know that, hey, can happen in 4 to 6 weeks, why not do it? Because that same amount of time is going to pass regardless.
Exactly. And I sort of build my sites and teach to essentially do sprints of work. So, I'm talking about publishing 10 articles and then go try and do blog commenting and get the guest post with just 10 articles. And, people, as we were talking about perfectionism earlier, people think maybe they need to make their site more full and publish 50 articles or 100, and it's just not necessary. You can go ahead and launch your blog before you have that. In fact, I launched my blog when I only had a few articles, and I reached out and I networked, and I made friends with people in the niche, and then you're able to not take advantage, but you're able to take advantage of the fact that you're a friend in that niche. So you really are able to use these sprints and just publish small amounts of high quality content, and then build links to it. And then once you build links to the first 10 articles, and you can move on to the next 10. But in that way, you're able to make progress and get the small wins, get that first sale quickly, versus spending 4 months publishing content.
Right. And that in itself is important, because when you get that first win, it energizes you, because now it goes from being a concept to reality, and it fuels you to keep going forward.
Definitely. Yeah. Super important to get this small wins along the way.
Right, exactly. So based on that, then when you look at your students, the people that you've worked with, how long from that time that, let's say, they get that first sale to where they're generating enough income where it's truly making a difference, so people can get an idea of that scaling things up?
Sure. Normally, and I've interviewed dozens of people, and then some of the students that I have as well. So I have at least some anecdotal data. It's not just me. So about 6 months. So you'll be able to start making about $100 a month within 6 months, and then depending on how much work you put in, through those 6 months leading up to it, it could ramp up quickly. So we're talking sort of, exponential type growth, where you may end up at, $100 by month 6, and then month 7 is 300, month 8 is 800, and then it goes up. So obviously you eventually hit a ceiling, and it maybe it tops out at $5 or $6 or $10,000 per month. But from my perspective and what I've seen, it's about 6 months to make $100 a month, which for most people that is a significant amount. For example, when I got started, I was working on paying off my car, paying off student loans, and that sort of thing. And you ramp up a little bit more, and that's a car payment, it's a mortgage payment, huge amount of money. And eventually, for some people, if they do ramp it up, it's replacing their income or supplementing for retirement, for example.
Right, exactly. It makes a difference when you can have that clear objective, such as paying off a car as well. Because if you think about it, if you know that you're working towards something, then it's easier as you're planning things out. You know that, oh, this week I'm going to write 5 articles and do 10 blog comments, and then write 2 guest posts. So you know that you're working towards that. So as you see those affiliate checks increasing, you know that you're getting closer and closer. Like, all right, the car payment's taken care of, and then you can work on, well, now what I need to do to get to the mortgage payment, and so on.
Exactly.
Because I think that's just a critical component, because unless you know what you're shooting for, it's just kind of like, well, I'm just doing it to make money, but why are you making it? What's the end target? So then you know specifically, when you're working backwards, what do you need to do on a daily basis to achieve that goal?
Yes, exactly.
So as we wrap everything up, out of all the things we discussed, what would you say is the one thing that people really need to do if they're seriously wanting to build affiliate niche sites to generate extra income?
I think, the number one thing, and actually it's sort of general, right? So whatever your goal is, I think it's really important to, sit down with, a blank sheet of paper, no distractions, look at your goal. And I mean, you just mentioned it, and what's your why? What are you trying to do? And then if you have that goal down, like what you're really trying to accomplish, you can go a little bit deeper. And I like to use SMART goals to really break it down. And a lot of people they'll write down a goal, and maybe it's something sort of vague, like, make money online, or make a lot of money online is probably more accurate. But
Right.
if you break it down to a SMART goal, and I'll just mention what that is, it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and within a time frame. If you go through those steps and map out your goal using the SMART goal framework, it forces you to think about exactly what you're trying to do and how you're going to get there. If you don't put a specific goal, well, you're not really going to know if you get there, and that kind of means you're always going to be disappointed. You're going to feel like you didn't accomplish your goal if you didn't give yourself anything to really measure against. And then the other part that people often miss is the timetable. So you want to say make $100 a month within 6 months online, and you have to fill out some other information. But if you break it down like that, it makes you sort of think, well, if I want to do that in 6 months, that means month one, I need to do stuff like figure out my niche, and look at keywords, and by month two, well, I definitely need to have hosting set up, and so on. So it really makes you sort of plan ahead of time. And I know some people get a little worried about having a plan. They think maybe it's too rigid. They want to be free flowing, but it's not really that you have to stick to the plan. It's that you need to think about the process of planning and think start to finish. So I guess I was all over the place, but to wrap it up, it's really, set a goal and think about what that really looks like. Write it out, start to finish. You don't have to follow that plan, but if you think about it from start to finish, it'll clarify things for you in ways you probably don't realize.
Right, exactly. And that's so critical to have that SMART goal in place, because now you know the action plan to get there. So how can people get started in learning more about you, and then how to get into the world of building niche profit sites?
Sure. So if you go to nichesiteproject.com/big movement, I put together quite a few goodies that'll help you get started. So you'll just have to enter your name and email address, but I'll give you 15,000 keywords that I've extracted from basically other profitable sites. And that's totally free. You can sort through them. It's organized by site. I also have sort of a task list, which is basically a project plan for creating a niche site to just sort of get you started, so you could see the phases, some of the stuff that we talked about, but you can see the phases and each of the tasks that you need to do along the way. And there's a bunch of other cool stuff that can help you do blog commenting in an efficient way. I have templates for guest posting, all the stuff that you really need. I essentially just give it to you. So if you head over to nichesiteproject.com/big movement, it's all there.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, I want to thank you, Doug, for coming on to the Big Movement podcast today and sharing your wealth of wisdom on making money, especially with Amazon.
Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure, and I hope to hear from a lot of the Big Movement community.
Thanks for listening to the Big Movement Podcast today. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Now that you've surely been inspired to take your entrepreneurial career and business to the next level, you can stop by the website and get more. And if you're ready to boost your business brand, be sure to grab your free report, 7 Easy Steps to Build Your Brand Today.